Hema Div Kusantron, Claire, Marcus, Diane, Gerald, Nora, Lily, Trevor, Walter, Patricia, Ethan, Sandra, Hannah, Serena, Kevin, David, Mom, Abby, Raymond, June, Constance, Ivy, Cole, Fubi, Pop, Tui Suju, Tippy and Poet, Tui Fun, Hotman, Muken, Ian Havi, Timidabo, Matabo, Inja, AI Startup SaaS Bay, Giab Diab Gi, Abia Via V, Bekatswa, Aikawa, Anjav, Dan, Hartum, Charleston, ST. My mom has a way of saying things that sounds perfectly reasonable on the surface. Calm voice. Measured. Like she's just stating facts about the weather or the price of groceries. That's what makes it so devastating when the words are actually a knife. She said it at the dinner table on a Tuesday in November. I remember because my dad had just gotten home from the hospital, still in his dress shirt, and my brother had this look on his face. That particular look he gets when he already knows something bad is about to happen and he's decided not to stop it. Mara, my mom said, setting down her fork, your father and I have been talking, and we've decided that if you go through with dropping out of the program, you cannot stay in this house. I had been in my second year of medical school, Johns Hopkins, the thing my parents had wanted since before I could form coherent sentences. My dad is a cardiologist, my grandfather was a surgeon, my brother is finishing his residency in neurology right now. The Vance family doesn't make restaurants or startups or content or anything that can't be explained in a sentence that ends with, and he saves lives. I had been working on something for 8 months at that point, a SaaS platform, subscription software for small medical practices, the kind that couldn't afford enterprise systems but were drowning in scheduling errors and billing gaps and patient no-shows that were slowly bleeding them dry. I knew the problem intimately because I'd grown up watching my dad complain about it. I'd spent a summer as a front desk admin at a clinic in Baltimore just to understand the workflow from the inside. I had a prototype. I had 2 pilot practices already testing it. I had a letter of intent from a third one. I had told none of this to my family. What they knew was I had stopped going to 2 of my classes. What they suspected was I was throwing my life away for something stupid. What my brother had apparently told my mom was, he'd seen my laptop open to a GitHub repository and a Stripe dashboard, and it looked like I was playing entrepreneur. That word, playing. I'm not playing, I said. My mom looked at me the way you look at a child who insists the drawing they made is a horse when it is clearly not a horse. Mara, you have 1 year left before rotations. You are so close. Your father worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years to give you this opportunity. I will not watch you throw that away for a website. It's not a website, it's I don't care what it is. Her voice didn't rise. That was the thing. It never rose. I care that you are making a decision that will humiliate this family and ruin your future. And if you make that decision, you need to make it somewhere else. My dad didn't say anything. He picked up his fork and went back to eating. That silence was its own kind of sentence. My brother looked at his phone. I went upstairs and sat on my bed for a long time. I opened my laptop. I looked at the dashboard for my 2 pilot practices. One of them had sent me a message that afternoon that I hadn't read yet. The office manager at the clinic in Towson, her name was Ruth, and she was 62 years old, and she'd been doing medical office administration since before I was born. And she had told me, 3 weeks earlier, that my software had cut their no-show rate by 31% in the first month. Her message said, Mara, I just want you to know we renewed for the annual plan, and I've told 2 other offices about you. Call me when you can. I sat with that for a minute. Then I packed a bag. I didn't pack dramatically. That's the thing about real life. It's not cinematic. I packed like someone who was going to be gone for a while and needed to be practical about it. Laptop. Charger, 1 week of clothes, my external hard drive with all my backups, my lease folder because I knew I'd need documents, the $4,100 I had in my checking account, which sounds like something until you factor in rent in any city where you might actually build a tech company. I called my friend from undergrad, Paige, who had a 1-bedroom in DC and said I could take the couch for 2 weeks. I told her I might need a month. She said okay. I did not tell my parents I was leaving that night. I left a note that said, "I love you. I'll be fine. Please don't worry." I don't know if they worried. They didn't call for 11 days. The couch at Paige's apartment was a love seat. It was about 4 inches too short for me and faced directly toward the window, so the morning light hit me at 6 a.m., regardless of what time I'd gone to sleep. I went to sleep most nights between 2 and 3 in the morning. Here's what those first months looked like from the outside. I was a 26-year-old medical school dropout living on a love seat, eating whatever Paige had in her fridge, with $4,000 and a software product that 7 people in the world knew existed. Here's what it looked like from the inside. I had never been so awake in my life. I had a problem I understood better than almost anyone else in my category. I had 2 paying customers and a warm referral pipeline from Ruth, who turned out to be the kind of connector that startups pray for. The kind of person who knows everyone in a specific industry and loves to tell them about things that work. Within 3 weeks of leaving home, I had 5 customers. Within 6 weeks, I had 11. I moved out of Paige's place after 7 weeks into a room in a shared house in Silver Spring. $450 a month. I shared a bathroom with 2 grad students. The kitchen always smelled like human. I worked. That's the thing I want to be honest about. I am not going to pretend it was romantic. I worked in a way that didn't feel sustainable and probably wasn't. I worked through weekends and through the holidays that first year and through the kind of loneliness that doesn't have a name but sits in your chest like a stone when you're debugging at midnight and you can hear the couple upstairs arguing and you think, this is my life now. This is what I chose. I should be sure. I was sure. I got accepted into a startup accelerator in January. 12 weeks, a small stipend, workspace in a building in Noma, and access to a network of investors and advisors that would have taken me 3 years to build on my own. I went through the accelerator. I got good at pitching. I learned what investors actually cared about, and it was different from what I'd assumed. I stopped talking about features and started talking about retention and churn and net revenue retention and the compounding economics of a subscription business in a market with historically low software penetration. By the end of the program, I had 28 customers and a product that was measurably, verifiably working. The no-show reduction was real. The billing accuracy was real. I had case studies. I had Ruth on a recorded testimonial video talking about the time my software caught a billing error that had been quietly costing her practice $1,100 a month for 2 years. After the accelerator demo day, 4 investors asked for follow-up calls. I took all 4 calls. I signed a term sheet with a seed fund out of New York 6 weeks later. $2.4 million. I sat in my car in the parking garage after signing and called Paige and said nothing for about 30 seconds. She waited. Then I said, "It worked." And she screamed loud enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I should tell you about my family during this time because the silence had a texture to it. My mom called for the first time 11 days after I left. She didn't ask where I was staying or whether I had enough money. She said, "I hope you're taking care of yourself." I said I was. She said, "Your father is very disappointed." I said I understood. She said, "When you're ready to be reasonable, we'll talk." I said okay. We hung up. My brother texted me a few times, mostly check-ins that weren't really check-ins. They were information gathering. Still doing the startup thing? Heard from Mom you're in DC. You should really think about whether you can go back to school and defer a year. I read them and didn't always respond right away, and when I did, I kept it brief because I had learned something about my brother. He reported back, not maliciously. He just didn't understand that some things weren't family business. My dad called once, about 4 months after I left. We talked for 12 minutes. He asked how the product was going. I told him about the accelerator. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You know, in medicine, we call it clinical judgment. Knowing when the textbook answer isn't the right answer for the specific patient in front of you." I didn't say anything, he said. "I'm not telling you I was wrong. I'm saying I see what you're doing." It wasn't an apology, but it was something, and I held on to it. After the seed round closed, I didn't call them. I thought about it. I decided I wasn't ready. I put it away and went back to work. The 2 years after the seed round were the hardest and best years of my professional life. I hired my first employee 8 months in, a customer success manager named Becca, who had spent 5 years at a healthcare tech company and understood the client profile in a way that would have taken me years to teach. She was worth 3 times what I could afford to pay her, and she knew it and came anyway because she believed in the product. I still think about that. Someone betting on you when you have 28 customers and rented office space and a seed round that everyone around you is quietly hoping is enough. We grew. Not virally, not dramatically, steadily. The kind of growth that doesn't make headlines, but that investors who know what they're doing understand is actually more durable. By the end of year 1 post-funding, I had 71 customers and an annualized revenue run rate that made the Series A conversation feel real. We closed the Series A 22 months after the seed round, $11 million. Lead investor was a healthcare-focused fund out of Boston. They had a portfolio company that was adjacent to mine and saw the strategic value. My CFO, who I had hired 3 months before the Series A to help me not make any catastrophic financial decisions, sat across from me after the wire cleared and said, "Okay, now the real work starts." She was not wrong. I bought a house 18 months after the Series A, not as an investment decision, not as a flex. I bought it because I had been renting my whole adult life and I was tired and I wanted a place that was mine. A house in Charleston, South Carolina, on a street lined with live oaks, with a porch that wraps around 2 sides and high ceilings and enough room that I didn't have to choose between a home office and a guest room. $3,400,000. I paid cash for roughly half and mortgaged the rest. I did not tell my family. I flew down alone on a Thursday in March to close. The night before closing, I sat on the porch steps. They let me in early. The sellers were already gone. And I thought about the loveseat at Paige's apartment. I thought about the cumin smell. I thought about debugging at midnight with a stone in my chest. I thought about my mom's voice at the dinner table, calm and flat and certain, saying, "Not in this house." I didn't feel angry. I want to be clear about that because I think people expect the anger. What I felt was something quieter and more complicated, something close to grief actually. Grief for the version of this moment that I had always imagined would include them. My mom called me in October. It was a Sunday morning and I was on my porch with coffee and the kind of October light that makes Charleston look like a painting, and her name came up on my phone and I looked at it for 3 rings before I answered. "Mara," she said, "I need to tell you something and I need you to listen." I said, "Okay. Your father's practice has had some difficulties. He brought in a partner last year and the partner made some decisions, investments, some restructuring, and it hasn't gone the way we hope. We're in a difficult position right now." I waited. "Your brother has his own situation with his residency. He can't." She stopped. Started again. "We were hoping that we could come visit, that we could talk. As a family." There it was. I had known, somewhere in the back of my mind, that this call would come eventually. Not the specific circumstances, but the shape of it. The shift from silence to need. The reframing of "we want to reconnect" as something that arrives precisely when they require something from you. "Mom," I said, "I'm glad you called." She let out a breath that sounded like relief. "I want to see you. I want to see Dad. I want things between us to be okay." "Of course, sweetheart, But I need you to understand something first." I kept my voice the way she'd always kept hers, level, measured. "I'm not in a position to help financially. I have obligations of my own and a company that I'm responsible for and employees who depend on decisions I make, and I can't let personal circumstances influence any of that." Silence. "I'm saying that because I want to be honest with you before you come. I'm not saying it to be cruel. I'm saying it so that we know what the visit is actually about. If it's about seeing each other, I want that. If it's about something else, I think we should talk about that now, on the phone, before anyone books a flight." My mom didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, We're not asking you for." "I know," I said gently. "I know that's not how you see it. But that's what it is, Mom. And I'm old enough now to say that out loud." We talked for another 20 minutes. It was not a comfortable conversation, but it was an honest one, maybe for the first time in my adult life. She cried a little, which I was not prepared for. I told her I loved her and I meant it. I told her I wanted her to visit and I meant that too. But before we hung up, I said one more thing. Mom, do you remember what you said to me at the dinner table? That November? She was quiet. You said if I went through with it, I couldn't stay in your house. And I want you to know. I understood what you meant. I understood you thought you were protecting me. But I need you to understand what that did. Not because I want you to feel bad, because I think if we're going to actually be okay, you need to know. She said, I know, Mara. I know. That was all. They visited in December. My dad walked into the house and went quiet in a way that I recognized. The way he goes quiet when he's working through something internally. He stood in the front room and looked up at the ceiling, and then looked at me and didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, You built this. Not the house? He meant all of it. Yeah, I said. I did. We had dinner on the porch the second night. My brother came too, flew in from Chicago. It was almost normal in the way that things can be almost normal when everyone is trying and no one is quite ready to be fully honest yet. We talked around the edges of things. We talked about the company a little and about his residency and about my parents' plans now that the financial situation was what it was. I did not offer to fix it. That was the hardest part. Sitting with the knowledge that I probably could, in some limited way, make their situation easier and choosing not to. Not out of cruelty, out of a belief, finally solid in me after years of being too soft about it, that rescuing people who hurt you and then need you is not love. It's something else. Something that looks like love but leaves you empty. My dad understood this, I think. He didn't ask. He shook my hand before he left. My dad has never been a hugger, and held it for a second longer than usual. That was enough. My mom hugged me at the door and held on, and I let her. I am not made of stone. I held on too. After they drove away, I went back to the porch and sat down and finished the coffee that had gone cold. The live oaks were doing that thing they do in December, holding their leaves when everything else has let go. I thought about everything that had led here. The love seat, the cumin smell, Ruth's message, the parking garage after the seed round, the closing table in March, all of it. I realized, spent a lot of years waiting for my family to understand me, waiting for the moment they'd look at what I was building and say, we see you, we were wrong. My dad had said, you built this. Maybe that was close enough. I had the house, I had the company. I had Becca and my CFO and a team of 19 people who showed up every day because they believed in something we were building together. I had Ruth, who still sends me a Christmas card every year and signs it, Your First Believer. I had, somehow, everything I'd needed. The porch light came on automatically when it got dark. Motion sensor, something the previous owners had installed. It caught the edge of one of the live oak branches and held it in a small circle of gold. I stayed out there until it got cold. Then I went inside. It was my house. It had always been going to be my house, I think. Ever since that Tuesday in November, when I sat on my childhood bed and read Ruth's message and understood for the first time that the people who believe in you and the people who love you are not always, not even usually, the same people. You learn to hold both truths, you stop waiting for the overlap, and you build anyway. I've thought a lot about what actually happened, not the surface version, where a girl gets kicked out and gets rich and proves everyone wrong. That version is clean and satisfying, and it misses the point entirely. What actually happened is that every person in this story got back exactly what they put in. Not as punishment, not as reward, just as consequence. Quiet. Inevitable, impersonal consequence. My mom put her certainty into the world. Her absolute, unquestioned belief that she knew better than I did about my own life. And what she got back was a daughter who learned over years of distance that love without trust is just control with a softer name. She didn't lose me because I succeeded. She lost access to me long before that, the night she made my future conditional on her approval. Ruth put her honesty into the world. She sent a message to a 26-year-old she'd known for 3 months and said, Your thing is working, and here's proof. She didn't have to do that. She did it anyway. And what she got back was a company that kept improving her practice, and a person who still thinks about her when the word believer comes up in any context, that's not a coincidence. That's just what happens when you give someone something real. I put stubbornness into the world, and I want to be honest that it was stubbornness before it was anything noble. I wasn't certain I was right. I was certain I couldn't live with the alternative. There's a difference. The clarity came later, after the work, but the work had to come first. It always does. You don't get the clarity as a gift at the beginning. You earn it by moving forward before you have it. I think about Becca sometimes, the first person I hired who came for less than she was worth because she saw something worth betting on. She taught me something I've tried to carry into every decision since. The people who show up early, before the proof, before the money, before the credibility. Those people are telling you something about your work that no investor deck can tell you. Pay attention to them. They're not wrong very often. The hardest part wasn't the love sit or the money stress or the loneliness at midnight. The hardest part was learning that I could love my parents and also refuse to be defined by what they believed about me. That those two things could coexist without contradiction. Most of us are taught, implicitly, that loving someone means absorbing their version of you. It took me years to understand that's not love. That's just inheritance. And you're allowed to return it. I didn't build the company to prove them wrong. I want to be clear about that too, because the revenge narrative is neat and it sells, but it isn't true. I built it because Ruth's clinic needed it and 11 other clinics needed it, and there was a real problem that I was genuinely the right person to solve at that specific moment. That's it. The rest, the house, the funding, my dad standing in my front room going quiet, that was just what happened when I stopped asking for permission and started doing the work. You build anyway. That's the whole lesson, if there is one. Not because you're certain, not because anyone believes in you yet, because the work is real and real things have a way of surviving everything you're afraid of.